story. I want to acknowledge this morning a passing of a legend of sorts in our movement. Reginald Nirvana Gale made his transition this past week. He is a mentor of mine and a minister of several churches, most recently the Guidance Church in Los Angeles. And he's going to have a service at the Agape International Spiritual Center on Friday at 4 p.m. So please see me if you'd like more information about that. But Nirvana used to teach the importance of knowing as we are known. That there's a presence out there that is a part of who we are, that knows the truth of who we are. And we get so caught up in life sometimes knowing ourselves in accordance with lesser visions of ourselves. That to know as we are known is to really live in accordance not only with a higher vision of ourselves, but as who we are really meant to be. So I honor Nirvana this morning. There's a story about the community of G.I. Gurdjieff, who was a great spiritual mystic, and he had a community in France, and there was a member of the community that nobody got along with. He was really irritating, selfish, always made a mess. Nobody really liked him that much, and he had enough one day and made his way back to Paris. But Gurdjieff decided to run after him, and he pleaded with the man to please come back to the community. The man said no, they had had enough, and Gurdjieff even offered to pay the man, and so the man couldn't refuse then, and so he came back, and all the members of the community weren't very happy about it. Not only was this guy who they would have been glad to have seen go back, but now he's getting paid. And so they confronted their teacher about this and said, what's up with that? And Gurdjieff said, this man is like yeast for bread. Without him, how would we ever learn about patience and compassion? So I like that story because it's a little funny, but it also speaks to an important spiritual point. Not to say that the irritating people in our life aren't irritating, or that the challenges in our life aren't challenging, but at a deeper level, we can also see that they are teachers for us. Not that there's some special reason for them to come to us to teach us a lesson, because I don't always believe that that's true all the time, but that we are strong and powerful enough beings that we can take something that's challenging us and learn a lesson from it. And as you know, sometimes when you learn that lesson, the dragon loses its fire. The monster loses its bite. You can begin to see past that which is bothering you so much and transform who you are in accordance with that. And I think it's a good story, too, for our topic this month, which is about overcoming our inner dragons, what we're calling those aspects of ourselves that we create sometimes to protect our inner good, to protect our own potential, sometimes from feeling overly vulnerable around people around us that we don't yet trust, but sometimes from ourselves. Sometimes we fear our own potential, don't we? Sometimes we fear our own power. And so they're meant at first to just be tiny little blockages, but as we move through life, these dragons, these metaphorical dragons, can become more and more monstrous as we become unaware of them. And they show up in our lives as fear, as doubt, as anger, as apathy, as these kind of defense mechanisms that we can also always know are also very close to our true power and our true potential. And I love this idea that when we're faced with one of our own inner problems, it means that we're close to our greater good, that it's an opportunity for us to better embody the truth of who we are. And so that's kind of a joke. I titled the talk today, How to Train Your Dragon, because I want to talk about how to better confront some of those challenges within ourselves and around us by embodying our greater good and our greater potential. I think the first thing that we need to know in confronting our challenges or our inner dragons is that we should never deny them. Don't deny the existence of a dragon because it might eat you, right? We have a method in our philosophy. We teach the importance of being positive, right? Always be positive. Always live an affirmative life. Always see the good in everything. And this is really important to do But I think we have to learn to do it in a way that doesn't deny the negative, that doesn't live in denial of a problem that might be taking place in your life, because when we do that, it might make things worse. For me, perhaps even more important than living positively is living authentically. Until we can be authentic, I don't believe that we can really be positive. We can pretend to some other's version of positivity, but we can't really respond to the good or the not so good in our lives until we can authentically honor how it is that we feel about ourselves or what's going on around us. Sometimes I see people so attached to trying to stay positive that they'll be sharing with me and they'll feel guilty because they have a feeling of dislike for someone in their lives. Or they'll feel bad that they got really angry about something that happened. And when they share, I dislike that person too. I get angry about something too. And I think it's odd that we would feel bad about ourselves for just trusting our intuition about someone or about a situation. To me, the real trick in spirituality is to be willing to authentically accept how we feel about something that's going on and then choose to respond to it in a positive way. That's one of the great gifts a spiritual teaching can give you, is that you can experience the negative in your life and yet still respond to it in a way that is constructive, that isn't giving it power over you. Elizabeth Gilbert, in our book of the month, Big Magic, does a great job of this by talking about her relationship with her own fear. She says, "It seems to me that the less I fight my fear, the less it fights back." Do you find that true? The less you fight your fear, the less it fights back? If I can relax, fear relaxes too. In fact, I cordially invite fear to come along with me everywhere I go. I even have a welcoming speech prepared for fear, which I deliver right before embarking upon any new project or big adventure. It goes something like this. Dearest fear. You see that you can embrace your dragon too? Creativity and I are about to go on a road trip together. I understand you will be joining us because you always do. I acknowledge that you believe you have an important job in my life and that you take your job seriously. Apparently your job is to induce complete panic whenever I'm about to do anything interesting. And may I say you are superb at your job. So by all means, keep doing your job if you feel you must. But I will also be doing my job on this road trip, which is to work hard and stay focused. And creativity will be doing its job, which is to remain stimulating and inspiring. There's plenty of room in this vehicle for all of us, so make yourself at home. But understand this. Creativity and I are the only ones who will be making any decisions along the way. Yeah, that's very good, isn't it? And for me, there's a great power that in being able to acknowledge that you have issues without embodying them. There's a great power in being able to acknowledge that you're afraid without being controlled by your fear, with recognizing that something's made you angry without having to become totally possessed by that anger. That, to me, is the powerful thing that Gilbert is talking about there, is we can't always remove or get rid of our dragons. In a sense, we shouldn't want to. We should recognize that when they appear, it's an opportunity to better embody our good, to acknowledge any issues that are going on, but to move through with courage and confidence. Now, how many people here have a daily spiritual practice, a meditation practice, or take some time and say a prayer here or there? Very good, good class. For me, there are some really significant and powerful things that a spiritual practice has granted me. And the first thing is being able to sit down with a cup of coffee and a book I really like, and just to take some time to muster as big of an awareness as I can of just the infinite, of just whatever it is that is sacred to me. I know deep down, my deepest of deep beliefs is that life is indeed sacred. Doesn't always look like it in all pictures, but I really believe that. And so I know when I'm able to take that little bit of time in the morning to just expand my awareness of how sacred and precious life really is, and how grateful I am to be a part of it, and to know the people that I also know to be expressions of that life. When I'm able to do that, it sets the foundation, not just for my whole life, but for everything that I do that day. So I really come to believe that each and everything that I do, every response to any challenge, any confrontation, everything I do is somewhat based in that awareness that I was able to make in that morning. It's founded on that. And what I love about that is it allows me not to be a reactionary or controlled being to my experiences taking place, but allows me to be a responsive being from that consciousness that I was able to create in that spiritual practice in just that few minutes in the morning. It's very powerful. But there's another gift that spiritual practice has given me too. And it happens on those mornings where I don't feel so wonderful, where it's hard to reach a consciousness of the sacred in my life, because the best word to probably describe how I'm feeling in that moment is yuck. You ever just had one of those days where it's just yuck? Everything feels like yuck. The gospel according to yuck may be coming soon. I don't know. But I won't speak for you, but maybe you've had those times like I have where you're just not feeling it. There's not a sense of connection. There may be a challenge that really has us down. And what I've learned to do in those moments, and the only thing I think any of us really can do, is just to accept it. Just to accept myself in that place of yuck where I happen to be. But the great gift that a spiritual practice has given me is it's helped me to know that even in the midst of my brokenness or my feeling of brokenness, there's a part of me that still knows that I'm whole. That even in the midst of anger or fear or sadness, there's a part of me that still knows that I'm connected to something bigger than I am, and that can never really be separated from that deep knowledge that I'm connected with something that is sacred in life. It's a great gift to be in the midst of it and the it that it involves, and also to be able to have that whole perspective that can embrace ourselves in it. It's a powerful gift to have. You know, it's challenging in life when we're faced with our challenges, but it's always important to remember that we can choose to live our life in accordance with our dragons and our challenges, or in accordance with our treasure, our potential, our dreams, our hope. And I think that although we go back and forth between the two at times, there's those two types of people. Those who are living trying to survive from the challenges that they face, and those that are living in accordance with their passion, their sincere connection with Source that seek to create it in their lives. Another story that Gilbert tells is a story of a filmmaker, a friend of hers, an independent filmmaker, who once wrote a letter to the famous German director Werner Herzog, who's probably more well known in the States for his documentary filmmaking. But the filmmaker's complaining in the letter. He's wanting some sympathy. He's saying, I can't get any money to fund my pictures. No one seems to like my pictures. The world just doesn't get what it is that I'm trying to express, and on and on and on. And Herzog decides to write him back the following. Quit your complaining. It's not the world's fault that you wanted to be an artist. It's not the world's job to enjoy the films you make. And it's certainly not the world's obligation to pay for your dreams. Nobody wants to hear it. Steal a camera if you must, but stop whining and get back to work. Gilbert's friend frames his letter. She shares, such reminders can seem blunt, and often we don't want to hear them. But there is a simple question of self-respect at play here. There is something magnificent about encouraging someone to step forward into his own self-respect at last, especially when it comes to creating something brave and new. That letter, in other words, it was my friend's permission slip. He got back to work. You know, it's an important reminder, I think, that as long as you're wanting to participate in the adventure of life, there's going to be dragons. There's going to be trials, and there's going to be challenges. But it's one thing to see your emotional reactions or responses to things to be in accordance with the challenges that face you. It's another to see that they are also in accordance with that great potential, with your own destiny. Have you ever had that experience where you may feel something, not just because someone did something to you, but because your destiny grabbed you and said no, or said you need to do this? You know, these feelings that we have, as mysterious and confusing as they can have that dual role. They can be a warning about something going on, but they can also be a calling to become who we are in a more profound and powerful way. I wonder if anyone here has anything in their lives that's calling them now, into those greater and deeper experiences. When we live our lives in accordance with our potential, we don't give in to the dragons. We can honor them, we can listen to them, but we always act in accordance with our deeper knowing and purpose. I love reading recently the story of James Clyburn, who's now a well-known congressman from South Carolina. And it's a story about him sharing with his granddaughter his own story of how he became a successful U.S. congressperson. So he had first ran for office in 1970 in the state of South Carolina for Secretary of State. And he won the primary. He was really excited. And he came into his restroom, and his wife had written a little note and hung it on the mirror. And it says, "When you win, brag gently. When you lose, weep softly." And I like that. He remembered that because on the general election day, the media was reporting that he won by 500 votes, but when he went to the offices, he found out that they had got it wrong. He had lost by 500 votes. So he said that he went to his restroom that night and he wept softly. He would run for Secretary of State again, and he'd lose. He would run for it again, and he would lose. And he said, someone said the following to him: "I guess it's 3 strikes now. I guess you're out. You have to give this up." And Clyburn shares with his granddaughter that might be true in baseball, but it's not true in life. That none of us can really surrender our passion. And no matter what the world tells us, no matter what the lack of understanding of people around us tells us, it's so important to stay in touch with that. Finally, more than 20 years later, in 1992, there was an opportunity with some redistricting and some opportunities for Clyburn to jump in and become a U.S. congressperson, and he was elected, where he served for more than 20 years, very, very proudly. He would share with his granddaughter, "There was just something that kept telling me, you can't throw in the towel. You've got to stick this out. You know, our state seal in South Carolina, we have a Latin phrase that translates as, 'While I breathe, I hope. While I breathe, I hope.' And I've always felt that wherever there's life, there's hope. I never gave up. I kept running for office until I got it right." We should recognize that training our dragon has little to do with the dragon or the dragons and everything to do with ourselves. Same with our challenges. We'll never be able to transform them to be the way we want them to be, but we can transform ourselves to become who we are, sometimes even in spite of how difficult or challenging they may be. All that being said, I recommend the following 3 things when facing challenges in your life. First, and perhaps the most important, is to acknowledge them. Don't deny your challenges, don't deny your fears, but recognize them when they're there. It's only when we see them that we can begin to have a sense of power over them, as opposed to them seemingly controlling us at times. Second, listen to them. The idea of listening to our dragons at first may sound scary, but it's important to recognize that sometimes it's our fear of our challenges that's really the thing that's bugging us. That's what's made them seem so monstrous, so big, with those teeth coming after us. But if we listen to our challenges, if we listen to our fears, sometimes we find something very small that's just looking for our love, looking for our acceptance, looking for our understanding. Lastly, tell your challenge the truth. Tell it who you are, and tell it what you're going to do. When we are able to do this, we release that grip that our fears can have on us. We release the grip that our challenges can have on us, so that we are better gripped by that truth of who we are. Whatever challenge you may be facing in your life, It says nothing about who you are. Never, ever does it ever have anything to say about who you are. It's how you respond to your challenge that says everything about who you are and who you are becoming. Final story to share that Gilbert shares with us in her book is the story of a struggling writer who goes to a Q&A put on by the author Richard Ford. And similar to the previous story, the writer shares that his challenge in expressing his art. No one seems to understand how difficult it is to be a successful writer, and everyone just tells him he should just keep trying, and he's sick of hearing that. And so Ford, listening to him, decides that he should give him the advice that he should quit and give up his passion. I say this to you only because writing is clearly bringing you no pleasure. It is only bringing you pain. Our time on earth is short and should be enjoyed. You should leave this dream behind and go find something else to do with your life. Travel, take up new hobbies, spend time with your family and friends, relax. But don't write anymore because it's obviously killing you. There was a long silence, then Ford smiled and added, almost as an afterthought, however, I will say this. If you happen to discover, after a few years away from writing, that you have found nothing that takes its place in your life, nothing that fascinates you or moves you or inspires you to the same degree that writing once did, well then, sir, I'm afraid you will have no choice but to persevere. And I think that's good advice for any of us in relationship with our passions, that we really have no choice but to persevere. And if many of us are truly honest with ourselves, there may be many places in our lives where we put our passions to the side, where we gave in to the dragons, where we gave in to making life about surviving the challenges as opposed to seizing the opportunities to express a grander version of ourselves and to know a grander version of the selves around us that can sometimes trouble us. It's up to us to not only confront the dragons, but also to confront ourselves, to take back up a sword for our higher good again, to take back up a charge to live an authentic life, to take back up the calling to be who we are with that presence that knows who we are, that could never forget who we are, that is always available to inspire us with who we are, if we are willing to let go of all the versions and stories and points of view that we have utilized to convince us that that is not the truth of who we are. So step into that power and choose to persevere, because only in that perseverance do we begin to grow and surely allow the fruits of the labor of our perseverance to take fruit in abundant ways. So thanks for your time, everyone, this morning. So great to see you. Thank you. And let's hear it once again for Andrea and Billy.